You'll never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid. And all that glitters is gold. Only shooting stars break the mold.
Welcome to another episode of the NRL Allstars podcast. Barnesy here, your host of the Allstars podcast, here for TLT round 19. So far along in the Supercoach season, we now have every major bye done and dusted. So it's a pretty big run home now towards the head-to-head finals, which are going to be starting soon, as well as also State of Origin decided tonight. Pretty exciting. And for this week, it's going to be a solo podcast. I've been quite sick the last couple of days, actually. My throat is gone, so I'm trying my best here. If I have to take some drinks of water, that's why. And also, I had Mikey lined up. I also had Wilfred lined up, first of all, if he could make it, but he can't. But he will be on the next couple of weeks. So Wilfred the Catfish Z, former champion, regular on the All-Stars podcast, and also from the Champions podcast. He'll be on soon. But I couldn't line up Mikey or Wilfred with my times and everything with work and also being a bit sick. So I've just jumped on myself to get this done. But it's going to be a shorter one this week, but nevertheless still pretty important. All the admin stuff out of the way first, guys and girls. If you want to support the podcast, please make sure that you jump onto YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and just do a follow, do a subscribe. Really helps us out. And also, if you'd like to, I'm now writing for the Sporting News Australia as an NRL writer. So if you want to jump on any of those, I heard a few people say, it was hard to find your stuff, especially with a Supercoach. I'm doing a couple of Supercoach articles a week that are all free. No paywalls on the Sporting News Australia. It's all accessible. So if you want to find the Supercoach stuff, maybe just search the Sporting News Australia Supercoach and all my articles will come up. And I'm doing 2 a week on there and it's all free content. And I'm also covering NRL as well with probably another 10 or 12 articles a week too, if you're interested in reading any of those. So jump on there. Like always, if there's no traffic on the Supercoach articles, then the editor will turn around and say, Barnesy, we just want NRL articles, forget about the Supercoach. So need the support there if you want that free Supercoach content to be flowing. And aside from that, of course, our great sponsor of the All-Stars podcast, oneworldcourier.com.au. Jump on their website and use them. If you or your business has any freight shipping needs, they are the people to talk to. Their website will compare all of the market, all the providers that you can use. You pick whoever you want, but you don't need to deal with them because you just deal with One World Courier directly and they take care of all of it for you. So make sure you put All-Stars in the free text area when you sign up for a free account today when it says, where did you hear about us? Just to make sure they know where you came from and just to make sure you get the best deal. Now, on to the podcast. TLT round 19. First of all, last week, round 18 was not quite the round that I was hoping for. I moved up a little bit, but not that much. It was a tough round. Some will call it carnage. I find it hard to disagree. Had a lot of major players out, like Ryan Pappenhausen, for example, was a big loss for coaches, and especially those that only had around 13 or 14 in numbers. That hurts when you get a big player like him out. We also had some lesser players, but still highly owned, that were just meant to stick around for the bye, Billy Smith being one, among several others as well. So it was a tough round. I ended up getting over 1,000, which I was happy with. But look, I find it a little bit cathartic to go through my negative experiences. Hopefully it gives some resolution to those coaches out there that suffered on the weekend, to know that I also suffered badly. But one of the moves that I was going to make was Cameron Munster out to KO Weeks. It would have freed up $150,000 for me. I thought the Raiders draw was pretty good. And I spoke on the previous pod for TLT about how Weeks was an option, but you had to be really careful because he has a lot of 30s and 20s in him. He would have been my 5'8" so I wouldn't have needed to use him every week anyway. And I sort of thought, well, we've got to take some risks here, so it looks pretty good. Why didn't I do it? Well, look, I thought that it'd go well this week, but I was worried about the 30s and 20s popping up again down the track, so that was a concern. And to be honest, it's a really good example for all the new super coaches out there about why it's so important to hold your trades, because I got spooked by having no trades. Like, my trades are super low. I can only afford to really be making trades for keepers or guys that I know that I can use. And I was a bit worried about it, so I didn't do it. Of course, KOX scores 150 plus. Pretty bad down dates for him, but still pretty good. And it was very upsetting. So I was on tilt at that point, looking for ways that I could have made up ground for not making that move. And what I ended up doing was finding Nick Meaney, who is an old friend of mine. I really like Nick Meaney. In the past, I've used him quite a lot, and he was very cheap at around 400k. Now, I looked at it and went, you know what? And I even posted it in a couple of groups and on socials. Nick Meaney playing fullback goal kicking is really good. I got scared off by that again for the same reasons. Low on trades, and next week he's probably not going to be playing fullback or goal kicking. He'll go back to being mud. And I was just too worried about that happening. So in the end, I did the trade and then I reversed it and didn't pull the trigger. Terrible move by me. So obviously he killed it. He was the best scorer of the round, scoring 160 plus. And 160 plus and 150 plus on a buy round, if you hit those two scores, you are absolutely laughing. And it is such a massive rocket of green arrows for you in the ranks. So look, I didn't do either of them. And it's a really big lesson, but also for me as well. And I know, I've wasted too many trades. It's a big mistake for me this year, wasting trades. I needed more trades right now. If I had more trades right now, I would have done those trades, because even like Nick Meaney, I would have said, you know what, if I've got like 16 to 20 trades, I'll just do it, because I don't really care if I'm only going to get 1 week out of him, because he'll make money for a couple of weeks and then I'll just trade him out and burn 2 trades on him. You can do that sort of stuff at this point in the season if you've got trades. So if you've got trades and boost now, it's a massive leg up, and it will stop you making mistakes as well. And one of the other mistakes that I made too the last couple of weeks, it also was last weekend. Look, I've prioritized getting guys in that are keepers for the run home. Yes, it is the right thing to do, but I've done that over getting other guys that have outperformed them or be better. Ryan Pappenhausen, I actually didn't have until about a month ago. I traded him in. I got the Gold Coast Titans game I was spooked about, and I thought he's going to be a keeper anyway. I'm going to want him in round 18 for the big buy round, so I'll get him in early. I wouldn't have done that otherwise if I wasn't low on trades and worried about getting him in for the run home at a good price. Got him in, and obviously he scored less than 100 points, I think it was, or around 100 points across 2 games, and then didn't play the buy round anyway. I could have just kept Turbo there and ended up with a great Turbo run, but again, low on trades, these are the mistakes that you make. I got Jacob Carraz in earlier than what I was going to. I planned on doing it in the buy round, and I didn't. I got him earlier because I needed to get rid of somebody in my centre wing that had peaked and was going to lose cash. And Carraz was the guy I got in because he's a run home guy, and I couldn't afford to get a placeholder in that I had to trade out again later. Again, ended up being a big mistake. So not having trades, one way or another, has probably cost me 400 or 500 points the last month of football, which is massive. And that's, not including if I vice captain some of these guys that went bang. So good lesson. I already know that lesson and I still make those mistakes. So don't worry about it. We're all in the same boat if you failed on the weekend a little bit. But looking towards this week with TLT, we're going to look at Market Watch. There's some really interesting movement on Market Watch. And this week, let's look at the trade outs for, first of all. Sandon Smith's the number 1 most traded out player. He's got to go. But what I will say with Sandon Smith, you don't have to run to trade him out this week. Why? Look, he's not even on the bench. If he was on the bench, it would be a massive worry. But he's not. He's got a 57 break even and he's not going to play. So he's 472,000 this week. He's going to be 472,000 next week as well. What about if you've got no hooker? If you've got no hooker and you're running really short, and this is the thing about this round, it's a great opportunity round. Round 19, a lot of teams are going to be short. Players might not back up after Origin. There might be injuries, suspensions, and then all of a sudden, we're going to have guys in the next couple of weeks that are going to be pretty short with who they can put on the field. If you're short, but you've got enough numbers, though, the great thing is that you can then go, I'm not going to trade at hooker this week because I've got other priorities. Maybe you want to bring a Nathan Cleary in, for example, prioritize that. And I'm just going to take an AE for Sandon Smith, because if you only got 1 or 2 other guys that you're not starting, then you can just take an AE. And even if they're an average AE, if your 17 that you do have on the park is really strong, then they're going to drop out anyway unless you get an injury and you're really unlucky. And it is a round where everybody's going to be a bit short. So just something to think about. Obviously, if you can make an easy Sandon Smith trade, go for it. Of the other guys, most of them make sense. Tom Starling, the Raiders are on a buy, so the Raiders are dominating the most traded out players. He does have a 94 break even. I do question who people are going Tom Starling to, though. Certainly, his minutes have been there, 67, 68, 64 minutes the last 3 games. Scored poorly with a 36 on the weekend, but before that, he's done pretty well. The Raiders have a great draw. Their draw coming up is quite good. So again, if you could get away with holding Tom Starling, I'm not sure if you're low on trades. I'm not even going to say I'm not sure. If you're really low on trades, it's not worth it to go to a Grant right now, especially when you don't know how it's going to pan out backing up from Origin. It might not be worth it going anyone and just running with a Tom Starling, because if you're really short on trades, you might have other issues. Again, I'm talking generally. If you got heaps of trades, it doesn't matter too much. You can do what you like and you can get rid of a Tom Starling, I guess. Other one that's probably worth talking about is Joe Tarpany. Look, I get the Tarpany trade rage. I really do. I had him on the weekend. I was expecting big things, and obviously we did not get big things. I will say, though, for a guy that only played 29 minutes, 46 points is really good. So it could have been a lot worse. I just feel like it's a wasted trade. I own him at the moment. There's no way I'm trading him. At 593,000, he is cheap. I'd almost look at him as a buy in a couple of weeks for a big run home if you needed some backup. But he's not great value. I don't really want to take a 100K loss on Joe Tarpany when I know that he's going to be good on the run home, and I don't need to trade him. And that's probably something to think about if you've got low to medium trades at this point. If you don't need to trade somebody and you know that they're a good enough keeper or backup in your side, then it's probably best just to hold back and save the trade, or use it elsewhere to get rid of somebody that you have to get rid of, or upgrade in a position where you have to upgrade. I've got May, Haas, and Tarpany in my front row. There's no real reason for me to go near that at the moment, especially with my trade numbers. The minutes lately, 29 minutes last week was low, but you've got to remember the Raiders used a free interchange for Tarpany. He got injured with not quite a hip drop, but that type of tackle, and he had to go off. And because it was deemed foul play, it was a free interchange. So they used it. They got him off. They said he was okay, but I mean, they obviously didn't want to risk him too much, so they gave him a bit of time. If he didn't have that injury, or if that tackle didn't happen, he wouldn't have gone off and he wouldn't have played 29 minutes. So the 29 minutes is fairly irrelevant. You can't do anything about injuries. And before that, look, he wasn't playing the best minutes and he wasn't going great, but his minutes were still around that 50-ish mark. And in the middle of the season, he was actually averaging about 58 minutes across about 7 or 8 games. And that was when he was going gangbusters. He was averaging in the 80s as far as his Supercoach point scoring goes. I expect him to have a really good run home. So I actually think he's value if you got the trades to actually buy him. I wouldn't be selling him myself. On the trade-ins, though, it becomes a lot more interesting. Connor Watson, number 1 most trading player. Really like him as a hooker. Really like him as a hooker on the run home. I think that him and Grant are 2 great options. They've got to be the top options for the hookers, so 100% get it. The other thing with Watson as well is another guy that's getting traded in a lot is a young fella called Going from the Warriors, who is a dual second-row forward hooker. He's playing lock in Queensland Cup at the. I think it's Queensland Cup he's playing lock in, but he will only come in probably if Aaron Clark gets injured, and even then he'll probably play decent minutes. But he's probably going to be enough. So him and Connor Watson actually work really well together side by side, because you can obviously use their hooker second row for dual status there. And it negates the need to actually get a second hooker as well if you've got both of those guys between your second row forward and your hooker spot. So that's a pretty good plus for Connor Watson for owning him. I guess the other thing with Watson, I kind of like him over Grant at the moment. And that's because when you're looking at it, Watson's draw, I actually think the Roosters' draw from now is pretty good. They don't have another bye. They start off with the Dragons this week, and then they've got the Sharks, and the Sharks have been actually giving up quite a few points. The Storm, not so good, but then they hit Manly, who are giving up points. Dolphins, harder game against the Dogs, and then they've got a nice game against the Eels where they've got a really good record. They do play the Storm again for a second time, so I wouldn't say their draw is great at all. They've certainly got some hard ones in there. Then they finish on the South, though. And that South's game could be anything, that last one. So they've got a mixed bag, but this round against the Dragons is a really good matchup for them if you want to get them in. I would try and take advantage of this week's matchup if you want to get some Roosters in. The other thing that you can do at hooker, and this is a little bit left field, you can look at somebody else as a pod for the run home. And that's what I'm probably going to end up doing. it's hard because hooker is such a poor position, but Watson averaging 67 and Grant barely averaging 60. They're not that far above in their performances where you couldn't expect maybe one or two other guys on the run home to outscore them. I would say at least one hooker is going to be right up at the top for this run home final third of the season period. The trick is who is it going to be? Because picking it is like picking the lottery. It's very difficult to do. A guy that I'm looking at is Wade Egan. And the problem with Wade Egan, I'll throw it out there now. He probably will get injured. That is always Egan's problem. But in saying that, averaging 58 for the year, he's only priced at 456,000. He's very cheap. If you go Sand and Smith to him, you actually make money out of it. And the Warriors, along with the Panthers, probably have my two favorite draws on the run home. And they're starting off with a New Zealand game against the Tigers this round. Really like that game against the Tigers. They then go into the Warriors, the Titans, and then it goes on to a lot of really good matchups. They actually play the Titans twice on the run home from now until the end. And the only top 8 sides that they're actually going to play at the moment are the Canterbury Bulldogs and the Dolphins, and that's it. There is no other top 8 side on the run home that the Warriors actually play. So it is a really good draw. The largest amount of bottom 4 matchups out of anyone in the comp, I'm pretty sure. So to take advantage of that, Wade Egan is a bit of an attacking hooker at times. At that price, I'm just probably going to go for it and see, because I need to go for some pods if I want to try and chase at this point, because it's very, very hard to chase now. So just a couple of options there for the hooker spot. Then we've got Ezra Mam coming in. Look, he's playing the Gold Coast this week. He's got a 33 break even. He's coming off a massive score on the weekend. Ezra's playing really good football. So for Supercoach, when you look at it, 95, 70, 64, 98, 41, and 128. His scores are unbelievable since he's come back. They haven't got Ben Hunt back into the groove of things yet, and the rotation's fixed up there. That's still a bit of a worry. 570,000 is cheap. I think that it is worth a punt. And the next couple of games after the Titans are going to be the Eels and also South Sydney Rabbitohs. So the next 3 weeks for Brisbane are good, and their draw overall isn't bad either. So I understand the punt. I will just say with Mam, you got to recognise that he hasn't been particularly good in the past. He's always been pretty erratic with his scoring. 51, 52, and 55. That's his last 3 years of averages. He's averaging 76 at the moment. It is pretty unsustainable unless he's going to take this big leap, which as a young guy could happen. I think it's going to be unlikely. So, I don't love it as much as some people do, but it is a move that you could look at making. The other options as well that are being traded in, we have a heap of centre wings that are really popular. Zach Lomax, Mark Nwangania-Tuaze, as well as Nick Meaney for some cash generation. Now, as far as Nick Meaney goes, he's got a minus 42 break even. He's playing the Newcastle Knights. He's back at centre. He may very well score a 30, but I think that you can look at it if you've got enough trades and you could burn one, because you are going to have to trade him out again. But there is a small chance that maybe Pappenhausen doesn't kick because of his leg, his calf strain. If he kicks against Newcastle, even better. He is cheap enough at 486 where you're not paying too much for him, and you can play him this week. So I don't hate it unless you've got medium to low trades, and then in which case I just think that you missed out and you just let it go. As far as the guns go, Lomax versus Nwangania-Tuaze, very difficult for me to go against a Nwangania-Tuaze trade. We've all doubted how much he could keep it up in his try scoring, and he's just kept delivering. He's got 13 tries, 14 line breaks this year. That's more than 1 a game for his line breaks and 1 a game for his tries. It's just ridiculous how he's been going. Got a ton on the weekend for those owners that brought him in for the buy round. Still doesn't have massive ownership. He's gone up to, 24%. Wow, he's gone up a lot more than I thought. I'll take that back. His ownership is pretty big now. It's going to be even bigger. Coming up against the Dragons, though, it's another great matchup. So we talked about that Roosters draw before. I couldn't back against him, even at 689,000. I can't get him in myself because I don't have the means to with the trades that I have. But I will say it does have a bit of a Herbie Farnworth feeling where, for months at the start of the season, me and a lot of other people thought Herbie can't possibly keep it up. And he did, and he's having a career year, and he's probably going to finish that way and still keep it up. Nawangania Tuaze, I think he's going to keep it up. He's also playing sort of for a contract extension. In November, he's able to negotiate a new deal, and the Wallabies are after him to go back to rugby union as well. He's got a lot of motivation to keep it up, and I think that he will. So I like him as a buy, and the fact that he can get so many tackle breaks, double-digit tackle breaks on the weekend, and the way he scores tries, normally it does have 3-4 tackle breaks each try scoring motion. It's really good for Supercoach. Zach Lomax now as an option instead of Mark because they're almost the same in value now. I am not going to have Lomax for the run home, but that is more trade-wise than anything else. I do think that he's a good option. 75 for the year. Last 2 games, 88 and 81 points. They were against the Dragons and the Titans, though. And this is a thing with Lomax. Like, I couldn't talk anyone off him. 39 raw base. He's getting towards 60 just about with his power base stats. But their run home for the Eels, not the greatest. Panthers, and then away against the Raiders, away against the Broncos, home versus Storm. Next month of footy, I'm going to just say I think it's pretty terrible for the Eels as far as their draw goes. After that, it gets a bit better. From round 23, they then have the Cowboys at home. They're away against Souths, Roosters at home, away versus the Warriors, and the Knights at home. So not a bad run home for the last. But the next 4 weeks isn't great. If I had the trades to put up my sleeve, I'd actually prefer to wait. He's got a 72 break even. He's not really going to go anywhere. And the next month of footy, he's also backing up this week. But the next month of footy, the draw, I don't think it's fantastic for the Eels. He's got good enough base power for it to be still a good purchase if you want to go there. There is some other sneaky options that you could look at as well. I wouldn't tear my team apart for it this week. But I will throw up a couple little settling watches or potential downgrade options. The first one that I'll quickly throw in there is going to be a downgrade option. So I don't want people to think, Barnesy said that Ronnie Mulitalo is great. I'm not saying he's like a Zach Lomax, guys. It's not like that. But I'm looking at Mulitalo because he's got 100 break even at the moment and he's 439,000. So if you wait until next week, for example, there's a chance that he's under 400 and in the 300s for Ronnie Mulitalo. That's a really good downgrade because you can use him as a spot starter when you need to as your 6th or 7th centre wing, and it's going to free up $200,000 or $300,000 or even more, depending on who you get rid of, to fund another big upgrade. You could even do it this week. His 54 average is the lowest that he's averaged since 2021. Last year he was a 68 average, and the years before he was in the 60s. We've seen this before from Ronnie. He always goes on runs. We could very well see a run on the run home this year. So I'm going to bank on that. If you look at 2024, he's run home from round 19 to 27. He averaged 92 points per game. He did it last year. The Sharks draw, I've seen people selling Nico Hines the last couple of weeks, and I've said so many times, I'm not selling Sharks because I actually think the Sharks draw is really good. 5 out of their next 7 games are going to be at Shark Park. That's ridiculous. At home this week versus the Dolphins and at home versus the Roosters the next 2 weeks. Those aren't great matchups, but it's after that for their 5 weeks of footy that they just kill it. They're going to be against the Rabbits, at Shark Park versus the Cowboys, down the road at Jubilee at Cogra, even though it's away versus Dragons, at home versus Titans, and then at home versus the Knights before finishing on a tough game against the Bulldogs. But if you're head-to-head, you don't even care about the Bulldogs matchup. You could conceivably play Ronnie every week from round 21 and hope that he does what he did last year. And you could get him at sub 400,000 or just 439 if you need a downgrade this week. So I certainly think it's an option if you're looking at a downgrade. Obviously, need to be aware that he's not an elite gun for a reason. He can have some terrible low scores. He can give you a 20-point outing in 80 minutes. It can easily happen. But he hasn't scored since round 12, and he's very much due to go on that run. So I'm looking at that very, very closely and considering it myself as a bit of a downgrade pod option. The other pod option that I really like, and this is a guy that I got in probably 6 weeks ago, is Blaze Talangi. He's averaging 63 for the season. Bit under the radar. When you're having a look at it, he doesn't really have a lot of low games. Everything is 50 plus bar one game where he went 35 and it was terrible. And he's also got a ton of 112 against the Cowboys where he scored a try. He is a guy who I think could go bang on the Panthers run home. Panthers, one of the best run homes, if not the best that you can get. It's them and the Warriors for me. So when you're targeting Panthers players, Cleary's going to be there, but who are the pods? Well, someone like Blaze Talangi, who's a 5'8", that you can put in your centre wing and only cost you 552,000. I think that he's a mad pod to get in. And also, for me, I've had him in centre wing. I'm actually going to trade King Tongia and move him to 5'8" as my second 5'8". And that's the versatility that you're going to have there too if you've got any duels for trading down the track as well. So, his base is pretty poor at 29. His power stats haven't been where we thought they would be. He's not getting a lot of tackle breaks or offloads at all. But he is managing to find attack just about every game. Whether that's scoring a try or creating a try, even some forced dropouts, he's managing to do that. And I do think with Nathan Cleary there, Panthers will click on the run home post this origin period. So I quite like Blaze. He's not going to get to 10% ownership, even with people trading him in. And he has an ability to go 100 plus, which he's already done this year. Second row forward options, we have Angus Crichton getting traded in pretty heavily. Fifth most popular option. Absolutely love it. 51 break even, 584,000. And you're going to be hard pressed to get him at a better price than that and only 4% ownership. So he's still going to be sub 10% after this round. What I'll probably suggest is teams are going to run low on trades and still not be able to trade him in much, even afterwards when we're on the run home and teams might have planned to. They'll just run with the second row forwards that they've got. So particularly this week against the Dragons, I think this is a week to get him. It's a Sunday game. Angus himself has had some big games against the Dragons in the past. If you're having a look at his scoring, he only scored 47 in round 8 this year, but he has got a career best 119, which I'm pretty sure was Anzac Day last year, where he absolutely put them to the sword and scored a double. And I mentioned this already. He's got one try for the year. One try. He's going to probably get 3 or 4 at least on this run home. He might even get the upside of getting 6 to 7 tries on the run home. That's massive. So I love him as a trade-in. I think that everybody should be looking at him. Aside from that, everything else is pretty standard. There is some cheapies or downgrades that people are looking at, like Talon De Silva and also Tanner Boyd. De Silva has a -3 break even. He's only 215,000. I was hoping he was going to be starting, and I thought he was going to be a great downgraded hooker that you could carry and have as your hooker too. The problem is off the bench, his minutes are just so hard to predict. It's Lussick starting at the moment. They'll probably job share 40 minutes each or something, but that's not great. And it's probably going to net him 35 to 40 points a game. That's probably an AE problem as well. If he was starting, he might get 55 to 60 minutes, and he's going to give you 50 plus points for that. I'd be getting him in then. So you can afford to wait a week and maybe pay an extra 30,000. Tanner Boyd obviously has that Warriors job for the halfback spot vacated by Metcalf. 329,000. They do have a good draw. Look, I just don't believe in Tanner Boyd very, very, very much. They've got TMM on the bench as well. I do wonder if Tanner Boyd doesn't play well for a couple of weeks, whether he gets dropped. If that happens, it's a huge wasted trade in a spot that is hard just to hold somebody in 5'8" halfback. So I'm not that big on that one. Let's have a look at the TLT for this week really quickly. I think the first thing with the TLT, look, it's the Storm and the Panthers with their extended squads. It's very difficult to tell who's going to play and who's not going to play. And that's going to be really key for this week. You need to make sure that you've got backup options. You need to be flexible with the trades that you're making. And that's probably my biggest takeaway from TLT. As far as the captains and vice captains go, look, Storm are playing McDonald Jones Stadium. Even without players backing up, they could put up points. Ryan Pappenhausen is back. If we get word that he's definitely goal kicking as well, it would be helpful. But a vice captain on Pappenhausen, that could be nice. And then we've got the Dragons and the Roosters as the third game. Mistakenly said, excuse me, mistakenly said that they were going to play on the Sunday before when I was talking about Angus. I was wrong. They're playing Saturday 5:30. So I can't possibly go past Teddy. I know that he people will say he got saved on the weekend with the last-minute try to score 77. I would argue that he got underscored significantly. And I try not to go on around here, but young Rodwell, everywhere except for Supercoach stats, was registered with 2 line breaks. He had 2 very, very clear line breaks, and Teddy gave him both of those, and Teddy only got 1 line break assist, and young Rodwell only got given 1 line break on Supercoach. It was really, really bad updating and scoring by the scorers. So I actually think that Teddy was dudded. He should have been a 90-plus score, and I don't really care when he scores his tries. He always generally comes through. And this week versus the Dragons, I'm hoping that people will be put off by last week's score and by last week's shock loss against the Tigers, because he put up 128 against the Dragons on Anzac Day and absolutely carved them. When you're having a look at his averages, 87 average versus the Dragons with a 182 high. You're hard-pressed to find anything better than that. His 87 average is the best out of any team aside from the Gold Coast Titans, and it's just a no-brainer for me. Now, if you want to go the vice-captain on him, that can work out really well. If you want a left-field one, I'll tell you what, one of the reasons why I said not to trade Hines is because of that run coming up. And I will just say, like, if you're looking at Hines very quickly, he's average versus the Dolphins isn't great, but he's only played them twice. But when you're looking at some of the other games that he's playing, he's got the Dragons coming up. He averages 120 versus them. And he's also got the Cowboys coming up where he averages 90 against them. You know, that's a couple of games to really look forward to. But at Shark Park, with a lot of pressure on them, nobody's going to be on Hines. He may very well throw up a 60 or 70 again. But if you're struggling for early VC options, he's definitely going to be a massive pod one. So I reckon that you could look at him still because he's due a big one and they might be up for it at Shark Park this week. Other than that, when we're going down the games, it's pretty hard to go past the Penrith Panthers against the Parramatta Eels. Combank Stadium, which they're both playing at this year, as we know, Nathan Cleary likely to back up 4:05 p.m. on a Sunday. That's going to be very hard to go past as well. So it's a really nice round where there's a lot of options because we want to have different captains this week. We don't want to have everybody doing the same thing. And I think that's going to be a week where we do get that. When we're having a look at Cleary, not Jet Cleary, it came up with Jet Cleary. No, we don't want to captain Jet Cleary. We want to captain Nathan. 64 average versus the Eels and a 109 high. It's actually not great when you're looking at how well he's scored versus them. So, you know, does history get taken into account that much? I don't think so, because the Eels, to me, are giving up a lot of points. So VC Teddy, C Cleary is probably going to be hugely popular, and the other options are going to be the pod ones. But I'm going to leave it at that for TLT, for captains and vice captains. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. Really appreciate the support. Apologise for my voice and croakiness again. Hopefully I'll get over this cold soon. But look, jump on YouTube, jump on iTunes, jump on Spotify and subscribe. Thanks for supporting the podcast. Enjoy Origin tonight, both north of the border and in my area, New South Wales. Hopefully it's a cracker decider and everyone enjoys it. Good luck with your Supercoach trades. Can't wait to talk more footy again real soon.
You'll never know if you don't go. You'll never shine if you don't glow. Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid. And all that glitters is gold. Only shooting stars.